I wanted to alert the public that agents are at my door right now. This is all stemming from the fact that I filmed a protest as a member of the media. It's hard to understand how we have a constitution, constitutional rights, when you can just be arrested for being a member of the press. We've seen all these violations. All right, you guys, I gotta go. They're knocking.
Yep, she's coming right now.
It's an extraordinary thing to live through, to see in real time happening in your country and in your profession. It's a line that we as a country cannot uncross. The Trump administration has arrested 2 journalists today, former CNN anchor Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, whose video you just saw right there. She goes on to say that her children are impacted by this after they both documented protests that took place inside a church in Minneapolis. The protests inside the church took place in the immediate aftermath of the killing of Renee Nicole Good. Protesters interrupted services at a church where an immigration and customs enforcement official serves as a pastor, and those protesters chanted "ICE out." Lemon and Ford were there covering it, and they were indicted on 2 civil rights charges: conspiracy against freedom of religion and interfering with the exercise of freedom of religion at a place of worship. They face up to 10 years in prison. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the arrests of Lemon and Ford along with 2 activists in a post on social media this morning, saying the arrest occurred at her direction. In a video statement under that said, quote, "Under President Trump's leadership in this administration, you have the right to worship freely and safely. If you violate that sacred right, we are coming after you," end quote. It comes after lawyers and judges have pushed back against the Justice Department on charging Lemon. A federal magistrate judge declined to approve a criminal complaint against Don Lemon last week. And our own Carol Leonnig reports that many career prosecutors who are still inside DOJ after the last 15 months are still there. People inside both the Minnesota and Los Angeles offices who've seen everything else that has happened. Where Lemon was arrested, that was the Los Angeles office, refused to be involved in charging Don Lemon and others around covering this church protest. They know the evidence does not back up the charges, which require use of force or threat of it. Here's some of Don Lemon's own footage from when he was covering the protest. Take a look.
So the protesters are confronting church members and leaders. They have stopped the service. A lot of people, a number of people have left. There are some who are still sitting here.
Are you okay with the injustice that's happening within your city? We pray for justice. Are you okay? No, so you're not okay with
I'm just here. I'm just here photographing.
Are you okay with the injustice?
I'm not part of the group. I'm just here photographing. I'm a journalist.
I want to bring in to our coverage senior investigative reporter Carol Leonnig. Melissa, John, and the Rev are still here. Carol, tell us, this is a fast-moving story. Tell me what you're hearing.
Yeah, today has been fast. So this morning, pretty much as soon as MS Now and other outlets confirmed that Don Lemon and several other people had been arrested in an alleged conspiracy to threaten people and block them from attending their church service in St. Paul. Minutes after that news broke, we were learning from sources that career prosecutors in Minnesota and Los Angeles had resisted, many of them resisted being involved in this case because they do not see how the facts that have been gathered, the evidence that is obviously videotaped, and you've shown some of it, Nicole, how any of those facts line up with the charges that have now been brought. That reporting is vindicated now by the fact that the people who actually signed the charges here in this case were all political appointees, top-level people in the U.S. Department of Justice, including Harmeet Dillon, Pam Bondi, and some other, Dan Rosen, the acting U.S. attorney in Minnesota. No career individuals signed that document. The next thing that we're learning, Nicole, and I'll jump to it quickly because it just broke moments ago, is that we have learned from 2 sources that the FBI's acting chief in the Minnesota office has been removed from that office It is based in Brooklyn Park, a suburb just north, several miles north of the center of Minneapolis, but it's considered the Minneapolis field office. And that person is out amid his agents resisting bringing some of these charges and amid their dispute with how the government, the Department of Justice, refused to investigate the shooting of Renee Good as a civil rights investigation.
Carol, what do you think happens next? I mean, the resistance to the arrest of Don Lemon takes place, as you said, both in the judicial branch and inside and within the executive branch, and it proceeds. Do you see it heading down a path like the attempts to indict Comey and Tish James? Or tell me what you think happens next.
So there is one, I am going to be a little bit nerdy and say there is one amazing similarity between what's happening with the push to arrest protesters in that, and also Don Lemon, a journalist in that church, and protesters generally, as you see on the screen now, who have resisted and filmed and chanted as ICE agents have been rounding up individuals in the street, surrounding cars, blocking in people of color in what they call a targeted immigration raid. The similarity is that the career folks who run the FBI and who run the administration of justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office, those units are being hollowed out. And that is exactly what happened in Virginia, in the Eastern District of Virginia, when Donald Trump insisted that former FBI Director Jim Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, sort of high on his perceived enemies list, that they be indicted. And in those offices, people basically resigned in protest or were pressured to depart over and over again. And now that office is quite I wouldn't say gutted, I would say quite weakened, and the same is happening in Minnesota. Sources we have on the ground there say that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota runs about 80 prosecutors and now is down since Trump's inauguration and accelerated by these immigration disputes, is down to 40 to 35 now.
Melissa Murray, it is such a dramatic overhaul that it almost is bizarre to say out loud, but they are criminalizing protest. And what Carol Leonnig is describing is almost the tail, right? So the tail of that is that the prosecutors and the investigators who would have to actually make those cases in court in front of judges are the people who have left, leaving it empty and only with the people who are carrying out the criminalization of protests. It is so, back to the Rose point, it's so foundational that it's just extraordinary to see it happening in real time before our eyes.
It is extraordinary, but it's a classic authoritarian tactic to silence dissent and to use the legal system to do it. What's really interesting about the law under which the administration purports to prosecute Don Lemon and these others is that it's a law that was intended to secure access to abortion clinics. It's the FACE Act, the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act of 1994, that was signed into law by Bill Clinton after a number of violent episodes outside of abortion clinics throughout the United States. There is a provision in the law that was passed as part of a compromise to get it through both chambers of Congress that also specifies that it protects a right to worship in houses of worship and prevent the obstruction or interference of worshiping in places of worship. And that's obviously how this has come to pass to be used against Don Lemon and the other independent journalists. But it is also worth noting that at the beginning of his administration, Donald Trump actually pardoned a number of anti-abortion protesters who had been convicted under the FACE Act, and the new Trump DOJ, very soon after taking office, issued a memo saying that they would reserve prosecutions under the FACE Act in abortion-related cases to those where there were extraordinary circumstances, such as real aggravating factors like the use of violence. They did not impose the same kinds of hurdles for prosecutions or civil actions for interference with places of worship. So again, a different standard here for those protesting abortion and those in places of worship exercising their First Amendment rights.